You may find this hard to believe, but 60 Songs That Explain the 90s, America's favorite poorly named music podcast, is back with 30 more songs than 120 songs total. I am your host, Rob Harvilla, here to bring you more shrewd musical analysis, poignant nostalgic reveries, crude personal anecdotes, and rad special guests, all with even less restraint than usual. Join us once more on 60 Songs That Explain the 90s every Wednesday on Spotify.
This episode is brought to you by Anytime Fitness. We may talk a whole lot about sports, but when it comes to keeping fit ourselves, there's definitely room for improvement. I hit this point early July. I was just like, I am not in good enough shape. I started trying to walk at least 15,000 steps a day, or hiking, or just anything to keep my legs moving. Now it's the end of 2023. I feel great. I had a physical 3 weeks ago, and the guy was like, "You're doing great. You're doing better than you were 3 years ago." I felt great. Whatever your goals are, progress is possible thanks to Anytime Fitness. Get a personalized plan and support from an expert coach anytime, anywhere. Visit anytimefitness.com to try Anytime Fitness for free. Start to train for your life. Terms, conditions, and restrictions apply. See website for details.
Welcome back to another episode of the Ringers NBA Draft Show. My name is Kevin O'Connor, and joining me, as always, is the Ringers J. Kyle Mann. What's going on, man? How are you doing today?
Doing fantastic, Kevin. I'm ready to go, ready to talk about some shooting form, ready to talk about all things draft. How are you doing?
I'm doing excellent today, man. I'm excited driving into the office after we do our recording here on Wednesday, May 24th. Going to record Beyond the Arc with Logan Murdoch, having him on. So looking forward to that. And I mean, it's the conference finals and soon to be the NBA finals. We got one team in, one team up 3-1. But yes, today we're going to be talking about the NBA draft. And I want to start off, Kyle, with the Thompson Twins, particularly Ausar Thompson. He's the guy who a lot of people have ranked below Amen Thompson, his twin brother. We talked about it multiple times over the course of the season. Amen, more of the 99th percentile athlete, explosive. He's been more of the playmaking presence, the lead ball handler in their time playing together and really just their time growing up together. At 6'7", 200 pounds. His brother, Ausar Thompson, has been more of the off-ball guy. However, in my next update in the Ringers 2023 NBA Draft Guide, I'm going to shift Ausar Thompson one spot up and Amen Thompson one spot down, putting Ausar Thompson ahead of Amen Thompson. And the reason for that, Kyle, is because he proved over this past year his jumper is ahead of Amen's, and we know how important jump shot skill is in the NBA. We see guys in the playoffs, if they aren't a threat to shoot, they don't get respected. It's an important skill. And also, the feedback that I've received from some people that Amen and Ausar, at this point, Ausar's shot through workouts has continued to enhance. And someone from Overtime sent me a couple Twitter links to his new mechanics. They continue to evolve and look, smoother and smoother. Granted, it's open gym workouts, it's one-on-ones. Ausar's jumper continually looks smoother and smoother as the offseason progresses since the end of the OTE season. What do you think, Kyle, about the development of Ausar Thompson? Have you seen significant progress with him as well? And what do you think about me moving him one spot ahead of his brother, Amen?
I think a lot of people agree with you. And I think throughout the year, I think when we first started talking about the Thompson Twins, I said I had Ausar sort of like in that 10 to 12 kind of spot. Like I thought he'd be sort of late-ish lottery. I don't think it's a wild take. I think you're within your reason to do it because I think it kind of pulls you to this spot where you're thinking about these players and how we view them and why we view them the way that we do. And with twins, this can be tricky sometimes because when you're growing up, you're playing together. They've insisted on playing together. They're even on the same OTE team, which I don't even know was totally necessary. I don't know I haven't heard a quote from them on what the motivation was for there. They probably just like being around each other, which is fine. But I think what it has ended up doing is they have my permission. It's fine. They can be around each other. I just didn't realize how funny that was.
You want them to hate each other. That's what you want, Kyle.
It's fine, guys. I pat them on the head. You have my permission as the czar of all things that are okay. No, I mean, like, but I think what it does is it creates this perception that one player is one thing and one is the other. Just because Amin had the ball in his hands the whole time, you think to yourself, oh, he's the better passer. Oh, he's the playmaker. And I think that's a legitimate conversation to have. Like, what is going to make more sense? Amin is a ball-dominant guy who needs to develop as a shooter, or Asar is a little bit ahead of him and can sort of trade on being a scorer at his size with his athleticism. And then we think, like, maybe the gap in playmaking isn't that big, and Asar can kind of bridge the gap and become a better player down the road. Which one are you more willing to bet on? A lot of people I've talked to are more willing to bet on Asar doing that than like banking on Amin following suit and having the same shooting development.
For sure. I mean, I think, it's even with Asar, you're still betting on the jumper continuing to get better. I mean, just because he had a streak shooting 35% or better from three to end the season, he did well in the OT playoffs. You still look back at preseason when he's shooting like 12% from three. You still see a sub 70% free throw percentage for the regular season in the OT. So you're banking on Asar and our men, two kids that are hard workers. They're basketball junkies. You're betting on character as well. But the rate of progress with Asar is at least encouraging there. And I asked you pretty recently, Kyle, like with these two, what level do they need to reach as shooters for you to feel like, oh, these guys can be all-star caliber players? And I believe you said it doesn't have to be 40% or 37%. It's probably more like 32%. They just got to be mild threats who occasionally get hot, considering their level of athleticism, their defensive impact, versatility, how they impact the game in so many different other ways as playmakers on ball, connective pieces who can make that, pass off a cut. They draw the defense and kick it out to a corner three-point shooter, the athletic, acrobatic finishing at the rim. They impact the game in so many different ways that if the jumper is at least below average, I mean, like that's a passable level for them, with where they are. But have you seen, like, mechanically, have you noticed, significant differences based off the footage we've seen with Asar?
Yeah, the footage thing is always funny to me every single year because you kind of have to do this dance of you have to really think long and hard about what you want to believe, because I think you and I have some version of this conversation every year where I'm like, yeah, there were videos of like JaVale McGee and Willie Cauley-Stein banging threes, like, in workouts. And it's like shooting in the NBA is just such a different thing. And I had this conversation with somebody the other day about like there are guys who shoot at lower levels in college, even D2, and NAI guys who shoot the shit out of the ball, and they get, it's just a different thing to shoot in the speed of the NBA game. So it can be something you have to really pay attention to. But on the other hand, there are times where I've been sort of skeptical about it, like Grant Williams. You remember like the workout videos of him coming into that draft where they were like, Grant Williams is shooting threes now. I think it can come down to the person. I think Grant Williams really worked on his three ball. I think he's shooting like 50% from three in these playoffs. So you kind of have to, you have to kind of pick and choose. But when you're watching them, and this has kind of been my thing about OTE, is that like while I've had questions about like the competition level, like I think the Thompson Twins have been pretty consistently the most competitive guys in the league, and a league overall that can kind of get a little loose and chaotic at times when you're watching them. Like they'll just be in transition constantly. I do think that they've put good guys around them, like a nice pro staff to help them work. Like there's a lot of footage of like, Kevin Ollie working with Amin Thompson on his point guard, instincts and things like that. There's video of Mike Miller working with both of the twins on their shooting mechanics. And specifically when you're talking about this, I sent you a screenshot from like a year ago, which the funny thing about when you're watching these two guys work out is that like it can be impossible to tell them apart. So whenever you're trying, it gets especially perilous. Like whenever you're just like trying to draw a conclusion between photos from like a year and a half apart, I'm like, I think that's Asar. You have to like really become like a forensic investigator to make sure you have it straight. But if you look at this footage that we saw, it is edited. I think it has to be clear. Asar, the big thing that you notice is the lines in his shot are cleaner. Like you look, the ball isn't like his shooting arm isn't sort of at a diagonal across his face. His elbow is straighter. And something that I noticed in some of their stuff from like a year ago or even back in the fall is that like your shooting is so important. Things that happen below your waist are so important because it all kind of stacks in a way that has to be even. Because if there's, I don't know, have you ever had to go to physical therapy, Kevin? Have you ever had to go?
Nope.
Good for you. I'm glad. but one of the things that they always did with me when I would go to physical therapy is just to make sure that the inefficiencies in my lower body weren't adding up to had bad habits. And the same thing is true about shooting. And I noticed in a clip that I sent you that Mann specifically is kind of overcompensating because of his strength. I think that the stronger that these two guys get, when I watch their fingertips, and you can agree or disagree with me on this, I think once they work on some of that stuff, like the cleanness of their strength into their energy load up, they do demonstrate enough touch that I don't think it's a hopeless cause, especially when you consider how I know that was a long soliloquy there, but I mean, like, I do trust them as workers to improve based on the things that I've seen.
Well, I mean, you when it comes to projecting improvement, I think you have to consider work ethic. Work ethic is a big one, obviously. That's probably the main one. Willingness to change and embrace feedback. And they clearly are willing to do that with how much they have evolved their shooting mechanics over the years. And then it's like you just said, the natural touch aspect. What are your limits? What can you become? Where does your hand-eye coordination? How do you react when a defender's, hand is flying towards you and it's kind of, in front of the rim and you're not able to focus as well? It's all of these things with your hands and your eyes and the touch in your fingers. And I think these kids, these twins, Asar and Amen, they've shown crafty finishing ability. Like they hit some amazing layups with English off the backboard. They at least show some ability to, have touch around the basket. It's just they have never done it from the free throw line. They've never done it as shooters. So, it's a lot of projection. But if they do figure it out, that's why these guys are going to probably be top 5 picks. And if not top 5, definitely top 10 because of their upside and how they have all these other qualities. And, we have Jonathan Wasserman at Bleacher Report who reported earlier in the week. He says, citing sources, the Rockets are content with their choices at number 4, specifically Amen and Asar Thompson. And he also mentioned the tape of Asar, his mechanics as a shooter. That's been impressive to scouts. But, it's interesting something like that leaks out at this time of year. It's always hard to know. Is this a smokescreen? Is this real?
That's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
Do you think it's real? Come on.
Yeah, I mean, it could be real. It's not unreasonable. You have the number 4 pick.
No. I mean, them being satisfied with their choices, I just think like linking the video part of it to it, I'm always just like, would a team publicly, it just feels, it throws a flag for me where I'm like, would a team admit that? Or was it just sort of included in a quote and maybe they were loosely sort of associated? Like, I don't know.
Well,
we saw the Twitter, we saw it, we're in, I don't know about that. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think with Houston, I've reported this throughout the entire season. Houston, if they don't land the number 1 pick, which they didn't, there's a major chance that they trade their pick. That's been reported by others since the lottery has happened in the last week or so. I still believe that to be true, that they are a major threat to trade their pick at number 4. The question is, who would that be? What would it be for? We don't know at this stage. The one thing that's a very, strong interest here is we have Rafael Barlow. He reported on his blog at NBA Big Board on Substack how he's hearing Charlotte at number 2 is doing their due diligence and is rumored to be open to trading down a few spots. And he also said the Pacers at number 7, they have number 7, number 26, and number 29. They're looking to move up, and they're a team that could have interest in Brandon Miller out of Alabama. And Raphael put in his article, he said, but it is unknown at this point who they're willing to give up in addition to the number 7 pick in a deal with Charlotte or Portland. I don't think Houston at 4 would be a team that would be trading down because they already have a plethora of picks in this year's draft and in a bunch of future years. I can't see that. But I do think it's worth putting them in there. Charlotte, Portland, Houston, they could be teams that could consider trading down or out in the case of Houston. But, this speaks to all this stuff we're hearing. Houston might trade out. They might go after Harden. They might do this. They might do that. Now we have Barlow reporting this about Charlotte. All of this stuff. I mean, we got a month to go, a little less than a month to go. This draft order is still incomplete, Kyle. I mean, so much could still change.
Yeah, you're looking at the picks. Like Indiana is an interesting one about maybe moving up since they're at 26, 29, and 7. You would think that would be an attractive package, especially when we've talked about how it kind of flattens out, at least by our estimation, that there's not, your consolation prizes that are big swings. I was thinking about 2018 today when I was driving, and I was just like, that just doesn't happen. Like, you just don't get the chance to take a Michael Porter Jr. at, 14? Like, that just doesn't happen very much. But Houston, I think speaking to the tweet thing, yeah, if they were going to, you would think that could be a piece of a leverage play if they were saying, we like where we are. Yeah, that does make sense. But, anyway, the Twins, though, how that factors to the Twins, I feel like either one of those guys, I think if you're like sort of measuring your comfort level with them, I really do expect them to be competitive defensively. Like, I think that they're going to take that really seriously. I think they're both going to evolve as ball handlers. The shooting thing is just, it would unlock so much, even if either one of them could become sort of catch and shoot threats, because off the dribble, they're very shaky. Amen had 88 pick and roll possessions this year and 80 in OTE, and he only attempted threes on that 10 times. And he hits 4 out of the 10. Asar even worse. He did, 7 of them, and he only hit 14%. So them as movement shooters, it's going to take a major, major, major development for me to buy it. I think at the best, they're probably going to be kind of connectors, like Lonzo E types, but more athletic, and they hit wide open shots, and you hope eventually they can maybe become relocating shooters.
Well, and this is exactly why if Indiana trades up there, it seems like, according to Barlow, they're trading up for Brandon Miller and not for Mann or Asar Thompson. That's their target because of the importance of that reliability with shooting. The interesting part, to me, with his report is that Charlotte is doing its due diligence and is rumored to be open to trading down a few spots. The Hornets at number 2. You, and Tate Frazier on Thursday on Beyond the Arc, we have a segment on there talking about what the Hornets should do if they stay at number 2. But now that we know that they could be potentially trading down from number 2, it is worth thinking about from their side of things. If they view Scoot Henderson or Brandon Miller, they might have them ranked number 2 and 3 on their board, but they might say 2, 4, and 5 and 6. The difference is there's no difference. There's no difference. Like, they might be equally happy getting Cam Whitmore at number 7 or Asar Thompson at number 7 or whoever the player is. If they could get multiple first-round picks in a year where late first round this year, man, like, I think the guys that I have ranked 15th, they might go 40. The guys you have ranked 35, they might go 17. It really does flatten out this year, in my opinion, from around the mid-first until the early 40s. There's just a lot of players that you can point to and say, oh, yeah, Julian Strawther from Gonzaga, he's going to end up a quality NBA player. Maxwell Lewis from Pepperdine, yeah, he really struggled at the end of the year. His defense wasn't quite the same as it was as his freshman season. Oh, but he turns out into a really good 3-and-D player drafted with the 38th pick or the 21st pick. That's the way this year is going to be. Dariq Whitehead, he was a top high school recruit. He might not go until the late first round unless there's a team at number 15 or 16 that decides, you know what, let's gamble on this kid and his progress. It's that type of year. So for Charlotte, I could see the logic in them trading down from number 2. You could get a haul if you decide to do that, just like you could if you're Portland at 3.
Yeah, I mean, do you think what's the possibility that let's say you've got an Orlando at 6 and 11? Would that be a move that they'd want to make? Maybe Orlando wants to sneak up and get a Scoot or a Brandon Miller. Either one of those guys I think could fit. I mean, I think the Scoot thing actually does kind of make sense, but you kind of start to wonder about the guard kind of stack up that they would have there. I don't know if that would be the right move for them. But yeah, you're right about like the flattening of the draft. It just seems like the range of outcomes are just so wide. It kind of makes me think about the way we thought about the 2020 draft, where there was, I think, starting at like 7 all the way through 30. We were like, I don't know if you had the same read on this, like 7 through 30. We were just like, I don't know. But then like a lot of good NBA players came out of that. Like maybe they didn't pop in the star sense, but you have your just going down through here, guys that have ended up being decent players. Beef Stew, Josh Green played a little bit in the playoffs. Precious, Tyrese Maxey, on and on and
Jaden
on.
McDaniels.
Yeah. It could swing positive. I mean, and there may be guys that maybe we're looking at them with the expectation of kind of similar to what you and I were talking about with Christian Brown, where we were like, well, we're holding him to this expectation. And maybe we're not getting what we set out to do, but there still is value there. They just, from year to year, the guys that are available, the upside maybe just isn't quite as high, but it doesn't mean there aren't valuable players there.
There was also another report from Jonathan Wasserman. He said there's been some speculation that Wake Forest Bobi Klintman could have a promise in the 20s, given his decision to opt out of the combine after averaging just 5.3 points as a freshman at Wake Forest. Klintman didn't play a whole ton for Wake Forest as a freshman. It's going to be interesting to see what he does here. I reported last week that he's not going to go back to college. It seems like he's either going to go to the NBA or pro somewhere else. He will not be returning to college. 6'10", 7-foot wingspan, 20 years old, 235 pounds, versatile, projects as a versatile defender, can pass a little bit. He has some shot creation skills, not like a lead ball handler type, but someone who you can have go coast to coast, occasionally run a little, DHO action for you. He can shoot it 37% on the year at Wake Forest. Teams are really projecting ahead. He's one of those type of guys, like a Josh Primo type, where you're like, oh yeah, draft him 1 year ahead, where you assume he could be a lottery pick in the 2024 draft. So, is there a team, based off Jonathan's report there in the 20s that you look at and say, Clinton makes a lot of sense for this team, pick 20 to 29.
You're thinking of him as sort of a stretch for the pre-draft thing. I'm not so sure about just because he's 20. Usually the pre-draft guys, I'm like, they're very young and, like we expect them kind of the Kyra Lewis
though.
Thing. Yeah.
He's raw. For 20, like development's, it's not linear by age. He's so raw.
It's true. It is a case-by-case thing. I'm just, I usually like the youngsters when I think about that. And you think about a year from now, he did kind of come on later in the year. But heavy quotes come on. He went from, 5.4 to 8.5 in the last 10 games, and he shot 38.1% from three. Doesn't really get to the line. That's kind of the thing you got to wonder about him. I assume he's just going to be a spacer and then give you some defensive versatility. Because he does block some shots here and there, 1.5 blocks those last 10 games as well. That's what he projects as to me. I don't think there's much upside. I'm not incredibly confident about him, as his upside as an on-ball person. I kind of feel like he's probably, would you consider him more of an oversized wing, or would you say he's more of a true forward type that gives some extra weak side rim protection? Do you think he's like a Trey Murphy type, or is he more of a big forward?
I think he's going to be somebody that you could plug and play in different roles. You could, his Swedish team, that's where you look at the film and you're like, oh yeah, the playmaking ability when he was empowered to bring the ball up the floor is there. You can see for Wake Forest sometimes his ability to immediately, rapidly target a shooter, cutting into the basket or spotting him from behind the arc. He displays some good vision. And he's not like a lead ball handler type. He just doesn't have the quickness off the dribble. He has a bit of a slow first step. He doesn't have that second gear and drives to the rim. So he's not a lead guy, to your point. But I think he can be one of those connective glue pieces, which is kind of a theme of what we talked about with different players and different positions in this year's class. I think he can just be one of those guys in a 6'10" frame. There's a lot you can do with somebody like that in a creative offense because of his shooting ability. Use him in dribble handoffs, because he can at least drive in a straight line, off that if he's has a shooter curling around him. I just think Klintman can be plugged and played into a lot of different roles on offense with his versatility. And then on defense, he projects as a versatile, switchable guy. I like him a lot. I have him ranked 15 right now on my board. I'll move him around a little bit before the draft, but I wouldn't be surprised one bit if there's a team in the 20s that says, we want this guy 1 year ahead. The question is going to be, does he want to end up staying in the draft? Memphis at 25, A team like that, imagine him in the Kings offense, right?
That's literally what I was going to say to you. The Kings one is the one that sticks out to me, or OKC. Get some more ball skills in their big spots. But Sacramento does seem like a.
How about Golden State at 19?
Gives you spacing. I mean, you got to think about what they would be asking from him in terms of their like stretch bigs. I mean, when's the last time they had like a real stretch big? KD. I'm trying to think of like a real 6'9", 6'10" guy that shoots threes. Otto Porter, was probably 6'8", 6'9", right?
I mean, that's kind of the Otto Porter role. That's interesting for Klintman. Like, just plug him into that role. I think he can do that.
Yeah. And maybe he's not going to be a guy that gets all the way to the rim all the time, but if he can be like a one dribble pull up, catch and shoot type player, I could see him serving, because that's kind of Porter kind of served that role when he was with Golden State. Granted, he was a whole lot older. I wonder if it's going to be a younger team. I don't know that he's going to help. What do you think the likelihood of him helping like an established, competent playoff team is right now? It seems like probably more of an up and coming team is more likely to add him, in my opinion.
I mean, I say he's raw, and when I say he's raw, I mean that in the sense that he just didn't play a lot, and he does need to prove that he can handle playing 25 minutes per game. But I don't think that's his role early in a season. For like, if Golden State drafts him, you want him to go full throttle and like 15, 17, 20 minutes at most off your bench, deep off your bench. But I think that end of the season, the 17 points against Syracuse, granted he didn't do much against Miami in the ACC tournament following that, but the rebounding, I think he has that skill. The defensive ability, I would hope that continues to progress more than it already has for him. And the shooting is real. The people I talk to about Klintman, they feel confident in his level as a shooter, being a reliable, consistent knockdown guy like he was at 6'10" for Wake Forest this past season. So I think he can come in and deserve an opportunity to prove that he should get consistent minutes. The Warriors, I don't know if that's a team for that, like Steve Kerr with his history with young guys. But like, if you're looking like in that range, Miami at 18 gets interesting because they know how to work in young guys. We mentioned the Sacramento Kings at 24, Brooklyn at 21 and 22, back-to-back picks. That's an interesting spot for him, but they have so many wings already. I don't know how that's going to, be shuffled there. Portland, who knows, at 23, but I think there's a lot of good fits for him in that range. And he's the one guy who didn't go to the NBA draft combine. He dipped out. So that definitely does raise speculation about the promise there. There are a lot of guys that went to the NBA draft combine. Kyle, last week, neither of us were in Chicago, but we were able to watch the scrimmages from home, talk to people that were there. Any standouts to you? Is there a riser who comes to mind first on your mind from the NBA draft combine in Chicago last week?
I think there was sort of a this happens every year where we look at older guys and we say, okay, this guy is a certain level of player, and then we sort of discount younger guys. This is the age thing that I think about a lot. I mean, the guy that popped and looked the most competent, I think he was just clearly the most comfortable, sort of competent player on the floor, I think was Amari Bailey from UCLA. He just looked unbothered out there. He looked really potent off the dribble. He looked like one of the quickest guys off the dribble there. Terquavion Smith had some moments, I thought, but Bailey was dictating the pace of the game, getting to the rim. He looked really fluid and comfortable. His shot looked good. I thought that he was I thought he was kind of the clear guy there, but it opened up a question for me. Well, first of all, I mean, what did you see from Bailey? Did you kind of feel the same way, or did you differ at all? How did you feel?
For sure. I mean, I think he looked like a guy who's reinventing himself. Coming out of high school, he's a 5-star recruit, and he's thought of as the score-first guy who doesn't do a whole ton of passing. And at UCLA, he got better, over the course of the season as a shooter, looked more and more comfortable, and that was encouraging for, hey, if he comes back for a second year, maybe the second year is where he'll blossom. But he tests the waters in the NBA draft combine and goes to the scrimmages, and he looks like a guy, if you had never watched any of Amari Bailey in high school clips or UCLA, you'd be like, oh, this guy's a point. He's a point guard, right? Like, didn't that would have feel like if this was your first time ever watching him, you'd think this guy's got a high playmaking IQ. Oh my God, he's so creative. He's composed. You wouldn't think that this is something that was like, surprise to scouts that were watching him. And instead, that's what he looked like. He was playing with such great pace in the pick and roll and with command of the game. I was very impressed by him.
Yeah. He had such a level-headedness about him when he was out there. And you're absolutely right about the Sierra Canyon thing. I mean, there's he leaves, and I know what you're saying here about like people had questions about him as a player, his kind of value, like what was important to him, and then he chooses UCLA and Mick Cronin, and he like goes, and that's a defensive minded coach. It didn't seem like a sort of an intuitive, natural fit for me when I was reading that. I was like, this will be interesting. But then he goes through the year and really commits himself to working on that, which I think is a positive. I guess your worry is that he is sort of a slider frame. You wonder about how strong he could get because his easiness with the ball.
6'3", 191 pounds. He is still light.
Yeah, the shoulders, you kind of wonder about that. You wonder is he going to be like a D'Angelo Russell type guy who's like very easy with the ball, scores it, has a lot of the same traits, but then he's a total liability. I don't know that, I don't know that D'Lo would have made that same choice and dedication in college, but he was almost a 40% shooter from three. You think about somebody like him and you're just like, I know I can play. And you go into a scrimmage like that and you show out. And it opens up questions for me, talking about the age thing. I think throughout this year, we've just kind of settled on like, okay, these are the consensus names. We're just like, okay, Kobe Jones, Kobe Buffkin, Hood Schifino. Are we 100% positive that Bailey is worse than those guys? Are we sure? Kobe Jones, who's 2 years older than him, are we sure about that? How high could Amari Bailey climb? I just think there was sort of a like sober up moment here with him where we were like, are we overlooking him? Is he going to fall for reasons that maybe aren't justified?
Well, that's the interesting thing about the timing of entering the draft, right? He's only 4 months younger than Kobe Buffkin, but Buffkin had another year at Michigan. He if you looked at Buffkin after his freshman year, you'd be like, maybe he pans out. He gets significantly better as a sophomore, and now he gets some late lottery buzz, but definitely some late first round, possibilities with him. And whereas with Amari Bailey, after his freshman year is over, he has a negative assist to turnover ratio, questions about his frame as we're talking about, questions about his jumper. But then, boom, NBA draft combine, suddenly, yes, I think it is fair to ask those questions. Is he better than Kobe Jones today? No. Kobe Jones is 2 years older, far more experienced, far more proven as a player. But will Amari Bailey someday be better than Kobe Jones? Maybe. That's possible, for sure. I mean, he's 2 years younger than him, far less experienced. What will he be in 2 years or 5 years? Maybe he looks far more like the 5-star high school recruit that he was projected as. And that's the tough thing about this, man. Like, it's really the tough thing about all of this with Dariq Whitehead out of Duke. Somebody like him as well, an up and down freshman season, ends it well as a spot up shooter, but not as well doing the stuff they did in high school. Some of these guys, they slip. It's about priorities. What matters to you as a team? Do you want more certainty in the player that you're drafting? Is the upside worth the swing to you? Every team is different, and that's what makes this year's class so interesting. Because yes, I think you can argue Bailey versus Colby Jones and Jalen Hood Schifino and some of these other guys in that range, but like that's true for the other way around too, with like Jaime Jaquez versus Jet Howard or Chris Murray versus the James Najee. If you're comparing different positions, right?
Yeah,
that's going to be interesting. And then you get these new names that are starting to enter that conversation in the 20s and the 30s and the 40s, like Omax Prosper. Like he plays one game at the NBA draft combine after his year at Marquette. He's a tenacious defender. And the draft guide update coming out next week, I had compare him to PJ Tucker. I think he's got the qualities of a Tucker on the defensive end of the floor, and offensively, he perhaps could as well, as a solid spot-up shooter, attacking closeouts, cutting to the basket. He's a high IQ guy off ball. But he has one big game at the combine in which he didn't even shoot the ball well. And then he sits out. And suddenly there's also speculation about him, like, hey, does he have a promise? does he? And he's somebody that I could see going in the 20s, but definitely if not the 30s, right?
Yeah, they should have promise rings for these teams. Like, we don't know who gave it to him, but the player gets the ring and they wear it and they're like, I don't know. I just feel like that would add to some of the intrigue of the NBA draft. No, he's an interesting player. I mean, 40, he measured out pretty well, 40.5-inch vertical leap. He's 6'6", so he's probably about 6. He's got a good frame, big bodies, probably about 6'6", 6'8" in shoes with 7'1" wingspan, 10-inch wide hands. He's kind of physically, it has some similarities to Kaluma. He's a little taller, but the way he moves, he can be. He was a tough call for me because, even though he's a Montreal native, he's one of the, first sort of success stories out of the Latin America NBA Academy. He was really off ball a lot on this team this past year because Marquette had such a competent attack with Tyler Kolek and Cam Jones and then Issa Iguodaro kind of in that high post thing. So he's really primarily a catch and shoot player, and he played sort of a modern style with Marquette. It was either catch and shoot threes or he kind of fumbled to the basket. Like, his trips to the basket were always sort of chaotic because he's got these big kind of fumbly limbs. I think defensively, I think you're right. Like, if
too much spinning from Prosper, like spinning and dancing with the ball. It's like, dude, just attack in a straight line and be a bowling ball.
Yeah, I would frequently hear the Hubie Brown whoa, 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 whoa voice in my head when I would watch him drive sometimes. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Yeah. Here's a guy from Montreal. But if you think about what's going to keep you on the floor, defensively is kind of the place where I tend to start. If we can get you on the floor defensively, can you stay on by not being a liability? He's not like a knockdown shooter, but, he also, his shot looks good. And I think you're right. Like, his size, and then, it's obviously going to give you some switchability. I don't think he's like a super elite athlete, but I like him. I mean, I think he's definitely worth having on a roster for sure next year and taking a chance on him.
Ben Sheppard from Belmont. He had a big NBA draft combine, dropped 25 points in their last game there. Sharpshooter type of player. 6'5", 194 pounds, 6'8" wingspan. He'll be 22 years old as a rookie. Catch and shoot guy. He definitely looked like the part of an NBA player at the combine. Like, he didn't just shoot. Showed some ability to handle at least a little bit. He was a point guard growing up. He had a late growth spurt. And so you can see some of that kind of like plays good to great with some of his reads on the floor. He had a wraparound pass that was beautiful at the combine, some cross court plays as well. It was impressive. I was impressed from him, and I thought he looked better on defense at the combine than he did throughout the college season as well. But comparing him to Jordan Hawkins, I'd still put Hawkins ahead of him if you're talking about that kind of mold of a player. Are you on the same page with me there?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're the bankable skill of Hawkins, I think his arc spikes higher in terms of like his movement shooting. I think he's going to be more useful in that way. I always say this. I just love movement shooters that you can sort of take the dial and crank the speed up, and they don't really change that much. And Hawkins is one of those guys. I don't think that Sheppard can quite match him on the other end. But the counterpoint, if you were going to pit those two guys against each other, is what we've talked about. Like, Hawkins in the mid range has a very slight frame. He's a decent athlete, but like when you see Hawkins get a straight line to the basket and he has runway to take off, you're like, whoa, I didn't know he had that.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Cam Johnson. Like, whenever Cam Johnson gets a head of steam on like a straight line drive, he'll do something athletically where you're like, where the hell did that come from? But it's like handle is the thing that leverages all those things. And if you wanted to compare those two guys, Sheppard, a little bit more point guard experience, like you said. He leaned scoring really heavily in college. He had almost had a 30% usage rate in college. Wasn't super about getting to the line, but he shoots the heck out of the ball, over 40% from three in a variety of ways. I don't know that it'll happen soon. It might take a little bit, I don't know. Do you expect him to be on a roster, like actually getting minutes next year? He seems to me like it might take a couple years before he really gets a crack at it.
Yeah, I think maybe, it depends on the team. Like, that's a hard question. Like, it really does depend on the team and the situation. I think he could play right away and get some opportunities if it's a younger team. But defensively, he's going to need to prove that he can stick if it's a more veteran team. So that depends there. Anybody else that we haven't talked about from the draft combine, Kyle, that comes to mind to you?
I had a thought. This is I'm kind of just trying to decide if I'm going crazy with this. So I was watching the draft combine, and as everybody knows, I watch a lot of Kentucky basketball. But I had a moment talking about sobering up and seeing things clearly, maybe in a sort of neutral setting of a scrimmage, not where they were in college. I was watching Oscar Tshiebwe, and I was just kind of struck once again by just how much his rebounding skill set just continues to translate seamlessly and like at a level that's extremely high. And I was just watching him and I was having the thought process, a lot of the frustration and I think the critiques of him were sort of driven by the way he was used in college, like so many touches, so much, expected of him, dinging him as a decision maker because he's making decisions. It's like you're putting him in a position that is going to expose a lot of his warts. And I was just like, man, that rebounding skill set is such a pain. I was like, is there a team out there? I would assume it would be like a rim protecting center that can also space. And as you and I have talked about, there aren't a ton of those out there. There's one going number 1 in the draft this year. Do you think the Spurs or a team like one of these teams that have, do you think that there's a chance that they might just take Oscar and put him in this very specific role? Because you have to protect him defensively. But I'm just imagining if you had an elite rim protector and then you had a guy who was like just adding possessions constantly for your team. I'm not saying you would start next to him, but I'm just kind of like a little window has opened where I'm just like, that's a possibility for him to be used. As much as he's driven me crazy, am I losing it, Kev? Do you think that makes any sense?
I don't think you are because I felt the same exact way.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
okay.
The rebounding is so good, right? Like it is so good. He had that block on defense and the offensive board put back. And like he also, I mean, the thing is like at Kentucky, like you said, he gets so many touches and it's frustrating at times. But in the combine and at his pro day, he's shooting threes. He didn't make his threes with the combine. He shot well at his pro day, open gym. Who cares really? But I'm talking like process wise. He shot 70.5% in 4 years at college. It's not like he's a hackable guy. Yeah. He's got solid touch from the free throw line. If he can at least become competent from behind the arc, a corner three-point shooter with his size, to add that ingredient, it's just interesting on offense. In addition to, you want him near the basket, you want him crashing the boards. But you can crash the boards from the corner, too. That can make you even more difficult to stop, rather if you're spacing out from the perimeter. So I'm intrigued because we know what he can do at a high level with the rebounding. We know that. But then it's like these other little things where you talk about fit and situation next to a Victor Wembanyama or whoever it is. But then also some of this stuff that he's clearly prioritizing in his development that could give him different flexibility within teams that he could be successful for. It's just, I'm intrigued. I think he's going to end up in my top 60. I would put it that way.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I specifically, when I was thinking about where would he work? And I got thinking about the Spurs and I was just like, man, that just feels like so cool. Spursy and Zag. Like, yeah. If he's on the Spurs next year, I love putting these like positionally strong guys next to the long, lanky, disruptive players like that. Like I love the Jalen Williams next to Chet idea, that kind of thing. I don't know. There's no denying his ability. He is just, he is just like tractor beam hands, man. He gets everything. If he touches it, he gets it. And I'm thinking, if you put me in a job where I was like a financial manager and you watch the way I perform, you'd be like, man, this guy's an idiot. He can't do anything right. But if you put me in a job where I'm, doing something that's more my skill set and I'm protected, you might find more value in me. I'm just saying I've been trying to think about the way he was used and trying to project it. And well, I'm glad I'm not losing my mind. It's funny how far we've come from the beginning of the year. I mean, just being so tired of those mistakes and things like that. Maybe it turns around for him.
I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued. High pick and roll offense with him as well. Like he's not posting, finishing on like rolling towards the basket with his touch. I'd be very intrigued. Very intrigued. How about Brandin Podziemski out of Santa Clara? Has your opinion on him changed based off what we saw at the draft combine?
No, not really. I mean, like a lot of the thing I've watched.
Did it confirm things? Since you say no, did it confirm or kind of solidify his status?
It didn't change anything for me. I mean, like I feel the way I felt for a while. I mean, he's a guy I've probably seen him as much or more as any of these wing prospects. Like I've seen him an inordinate amount. Just for this process, but because I think I was trying to confirm and sort of differentiate with him. He's so skilled. He's very easy off the ball. He can pass the ball. Like I've said, he's not ambidextrous with it, but he is a pretty competent lefty live dribble shooter. He can shoot it. He has funky middle game. But my thing is, we do get guys like that come into the league on a yearly basis who can do a lot of these modern concepts. But defensively, man, I just can't. I try to think about my teams for like the last part of the season, and I'm like, I just think teams would relentlessly go at him defensively. Could he improve defensively? Maybe. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I mean, he's a great rebounder. He's tough. He boxes out. He'll dive for loose balls. He's active off the ball. I mean, we just checked a lot of boxes on defense, but we didn't check on ball. And that's ultimately what he's going to have to prove. Can he survive with teams targeting him, bringing him into ball screens? I mean, dude, in the Celtics Heat series, we even see Derek White getting targeted. Derek White is a really good defender, and he's getting targeted.
Yeah, I mean that's the threshold that we're talking about here. And if you want to think about in the short term, like drafting somebody that isn't going to be able to help you in that way, I guess that's fine. Maybe you'd have other reasons for the short term to do that, but I wouldn't. I mean, I don't know. People are talking wild about him. How high have you heard about him going? I've heard like mid first round, and I can't quite get there as much as I respect his offensive ability.
Yeah, I currently have him penciled in at 30. That might change by the time we publish the draft guide update late this week or early next week, but I have a hard time like moving him ahead of a bunch of guys in the 20s. Never mind the mid first round. I can't get there. I definitely can't get there. 30's even tough.
He seems like he's going to like play well in summer league. He seems like that type of guy.
Yeah, he's going to be a star in the summer league. he's going to put on a show, and he's got the nickname Pods. It's a cool name. Spells his first name wrong with an I instead of an O.
Does he? I don't know. Who's to say?
I mean, Brandon Miller's got it right.
Exactly.
With an O instead of an I. I've never seen a Brandon with an I. Have you?
Is it Polish? What's the spelling? Is Brandon spelled the same way everywhere in the world? I saw Podziemski and wondered if it was a Polish name. I didn't know. I have no clue. I shouldn't even be speculating about that.
I am 25% Polish.
Are you really? Okay.
Yeah, I am 25% Polish. Yep.
I'm a German.
I went to a Polish restaurant in Los Angeles with my mom about a month ago. It's called Solidarity. And it's got all this traditional Polish food. Everybody in there, when we went, everybody's Polish. And it was one of the better meals I've had since I moved to LA. It was absolutely delicious.
Did you just visually ID them as Polish, or did they sort of,
according to my mother, who is half Polish, she said everybody in there was Polish. I'm not good at identifying like that. They just look white to me.
I don't think I could pick Polish people out by sight, but who knows?
Me neither.
What a great conversation.
A lot of people, like you could hear like voices. People definitely had like Polish accents.
Gotcha. You mean audibly? Yes. Okay.
Including our server, our very nice waitress there. It was good though. It was very good. I look forward to going back to Solidarity. It was a great meal. Kyle, any restaurants you want to talk about before we get out of here?
I had some good ones in LA. Whenever I'm traveling, there are a lot of late night by myself earbuds in meals. So those are always fun.
What did you have? What did you do besides when I wasn't around you, right? When we weren't driving around, to and from the office, when we weren't talking basketball at the office and everything else, what did you do?
When you weren't showing me your 0 to 60 in your Tesla and whipping my head back in the car?
Yeah,
Kev gave me the full Tesla pitch.
Yeah, I drive safe. Don't I?
You do. Is that
do.
public? Do people know you drive a Tesla? Sorry, did I out you there?
I don't care. It doesn't matter to me.
Okay.
I love
Well,
my
I'm
car
glad
very much. It's a lot of fun. It's a safe car. It's great. It's a fantastic car. I love it very much. My Model 3.
It is a nice car. I had Mercado was really good. I had some Mexican food from there.
You went there. I like Mercado. Yeah, very good.
I had brunch at a place called the Henry. That was pretty good. Yeah, I mean, it was overall had a good time. Verve coffee was good. I don't know. There's not there's a lot of work, and so it wasn't a lot of time to go cruising around.
Yes.
But Tyler bought me pizza one night at Pizzeria Mazza. That was really good. So yeah, LA, man, just endless good food. It's like
when you're
ridiculous.
Back, I hope we got to make sure you're back for the NBA draft itself on June 22nd. And when you're back, I think we should do a big group dinner, including Jessie Lopez, our producer.
Oh yeah,
Major Domo, near the office, right outside of downtown LA. Jessie and I had a big group dinner there a couple months ago. That was delicious. That's Dave Chang's spot in LA.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite places. Major Domo. We should go there. So maybe the night of the NBA draft. The draft after the first. I guess when we get busy work, but
we'll have to
maybe
work.
Before the draft. Yeah. We'll figure it out. The day after the draft, we'll go to Major Domo.
Day after sounds good. Yep, I'll go. I love it.
Celebratory dinner.
I've been to the one in Vegas. I haven't been to the one in LA.
Momofuku. You went to Momofuku. Yeah, that's right. We had our big group dinner last year for Summer League.
Yeah, it was good.
You have the pork shoulder there. Did we order that?
I don't remember. There was a lot of lobster and shrimp, and we ordered a lot of stuff, a big spread. But everything I had was fantastic. Love the place.
That was a funny dinner because I had a pre-planned dinner with some other friends at Momofuku that I didn't organize, but I had a pre-planned dinner, and then it turned out Ringer had a dinner like an hour and a half into our reservation.
Oh my God.
I just changed tables. I just walked across the restaurant from my original table to the new table. They were texting me, making fun of me while we were sitting there at Momofuku in Vegas. You coming to Summer League this year, Kyle?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
hopefully.
yeah, baby.
Ideally, love Summer League. That's my spot.
Anybody listening to this podcast, they probably already know, or they've been. I'd be curious to hear from our listeners. Tweet at us. Have you been to Summer League? Are you going to go to Summer League? And if you don't currently have plans, I highly recommend it. Summer League is such a good ass time, Kyle, isn't it?
It is. If you're a basketball fan, it's like it's a candy store. I mean, mainly because you're seeing players all over the place. You'll just see legends just kind of walking around, chilling. You'll see media people. I remember when I wasn't covering the NBA, I'd be like, oh my God, there's Zach Lowe, or there's Larry Johnson, there's Dikembe Mutombo. It's fun on that front. I always leave people be. Like if you see Kevin O'Connor, I'll leave him be. He's a celeb.
No, you can say hello. Please say hello. I love meeting people. And I'm kidding. I have never bet $1 in Vegas. I've never bet $1 except when one of my friend from long time, since I've been 14, 15 years old, asked me to bet $69 on the Patriots to win the Super Bowl. I placed that bet on his behalf. I recommend, if you're not a gambler, you're not a big partier or whatever, just do shows. Go to like a tent show like Absinthe, or go to a big show like the Beatles Love, right? Like do shows. Like Vegas doesn't need to be about drinking and partying and gambling. Vegas is about so much more than that. So that's how I like to structure my summer leagues now, is with some activities like that around basketball. It's
the Ringer NBA Draft Show, brought to you by Las Vegas Tourism. Kevin O'Connor just gave you the spiel there. No, I'd like to see Garth Brooks. That's one thing I'd like to do.
Oh, Garth Brooks, he has a residency there?
Yeah, people tell me that's a pipe dream. So if you work in Las Vegas and you can get me some Garth Brooks tickets, I'll take them. Yeah, I've heard.
Lady Gaga still got her thing there?
I don't know. I don't. That's the only one I'm aware of. Residencies.
Maroon 5. I just Googled that. Apparently, Maroon 5 has one right now.
Oh yeah, there we go.
I like Maroon 5, but the old Maroon 5,
the OG stuff. You hipster, you like the early stuff.
Yeah. Songs about Jane. Maybe go to that this summer. We'll see. Kyle, I think we're all done here. We'll be back next week on the Ringers NBA Draft Show. A lot more to talk about. Maybe some more rumors. It'll be June, I believe, right? Next Wednesday? when our next show airs. It'll be June. No, it'll be May 31st. May 31st.
One day.
Not quite June, but we'll be on June Eve, ready to go for the NBA Draft Combine, for the NBA Draft. For the NBA Drafts. Kyle, have a good rest of your day, man. Have a good one.
You too.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Ringers NBA Draft Show. Thank you to Jessie Lopez for producing. Hope you have a good rest of your day.